Okay, let's go.
Share screen again. Just needed to move this. All right. So since the last time, we talked a bit about UI mockup and how should the UI look for this. Just trying to identify if we're missing any functionality or elements, and if it all makes sense. So this is more of a functional design of the UI, not the actual mockups of the how UI will look visually, but they're just here to help us identify any missing elements, as I said. So we are starting with the canvas view, the view that you see when you open the canvas. We won't go through, at least at the start, we won't go through the definition of canvas and creating canvas on all those forms. We can do those later. Right now, we're just looking at how you consume this and how you use this day to day, using the examples that we mapped out during the previous sessions. So we have two boxes here. This one would represent one stage that we have. And we realized that we also need to represent this integration that triggers the stage itself somehow. And this will be drawn out on the canvas too. And that's this one here, the GitHub integration, because this canvas is, the run on this canvas is triggered by new releases.
Stage.
Yes, yeah, stage, sorry. Yeah, the stage is triggered by new releases on this repository. And you define that when you're creating the stage. So once you create that, automatically you're creating this one too, somewhere in the canvas. And that's kind of it. It's pretty straightforward. So new releases.
Yeah, I would maybe only add that. I mean, so far we have like two kinds of entities on the canvas.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this green stage will, people will have many of those, and they will be connected. I mean, the only other one that exists today, if you want to kind of connect the external world, something which is outside of this canvas, with stage, and then this gray box is essentially, in this case, GitHub webhook, and the next one would be probably like Semaphore CI pipeline for any of today's projects being finished, and that would be also an event, and that those events will contain multiple data points, and you can react on some of them based on conditions and so on. But yeah, point being, the gray stuff is connecting the canvas with the external world that exists outside of the canvas.
Okay, so that's interesting. Semaphore pipeline would also be this type of entity.
I would say so. I think it would be much more, transparent and easier for people to follow. If they would have a project today, and just when they finish a certain pipeline there, they don't want to touch that too much. They want the canvas to react to something that exists there. Obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's my view of the world.
I think that could work. Maybe let's map out this use case that we have for releasing the community, testing the community edition of Semaphore, and then it would be nice if we would go through other use cases like that multi-project workflow, where you don't want to necessarily use stages, but you want to connect multiple different projects in Semaphore in some way and have a central dashboard.
Yeah. I mean, maybe you can throw these two into a white kind of canvas. Although it's not UI design, just that it's clear that we have that sidebar which reacts on element here being selected.
Okay, so this is the simplest use case. I have a new release and I want that release to be deployed on this, through this stage, on this environment, right? That is, in this case, DigitalOcean VM. Here I have two things. I have two inputs displayed as metadata, and we realized on our last session that I can have multiple inputs on a single stage, but I can mark some of them as versions. If they're marked as versions, they're tracked as versions. And what that means in this context is that they will be displayed here. So you can have a clear view of which version you have on this simplified view of the stage. There is also a queue where you can see if you have, any items in the queue right now, but you don't see all the items that you have, and maybe we will have some quick actions of approving or
Just explain what item is. So each stage is listening on events from some source, and this source GitHub hook is essentially we have a message that arrives that have many metadata and data points, and then it enters the queue that exists for this stage. And obviously, multiple things can arrive, and you can kick them off with a manual approval, or they can be kicked off automatically. But obviously, as it's queue, you can have multiple items waiting in the queue, and you might need to interact with them. Just repeating from previous.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, and that's pretty much what you see on this stage. So what is currently, in this case, deployed on the stage. So I know that on DigitalOcean I have Semaphore Community Edition version. Should be not see RC1, and I also know that I have SHA here. That's just to illustrate that I can have multiple inputs that are marked as versions. And I have one item in queue, well, 3 items in queue, the last one being RC2. Now, in case I want to see what are the other items in queue or get more details about this stage, what we want to do is we want to add this sidebar, right? So when you click on the stage, and if I can highlight this somehow. Yeah, maybe they all have, well, we'll see. But when select the stage, I will get some sidebar. And I'm wondering though if sidebar is the best element for this, but so
we can make it gray.
Let's talk a bit about sidebar. I imagine that you would want to link stages to one another.
I think always on the stage we'll be listening to other stage. So you will.
Oh, sorry. I mean, if I select the stage, I want to have a URL that I can send to someone, and if they open that URL, they will have that stage selected.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but it's achievable. I mean, if you click on it, sidebar opens, URL will get modified, and if you send that URL, the person that opens that URL will should get the canvas in the same position and sidebar being opened.
Okay. I guess here.
Yeah.
What do I have? I have canvas name. Sorry, stage name. Well,
in stages will have versions, because life cycle of each stage is managed completely separately through the API, and not to get into all the details how versions will work and how they will kicked off, but there is definitely like a version of a stage. I mean, for the sake of simplicity, I would maybe just for now go with ever incrementing integer. So this is like v version 62 that was applied on a certain date by a certain person, like a last modification that was made to this stage. So we could say
yeah, you're talking about stage versions, not the versions that we had here, right? It's just the definition of the stage, the YAML.
Definition of the stage, yeah.
Maybe a good idea is to list everything that stage consists of, and then trying to see where it fits and which information is important.
Yeah, we don't necessarily need to work on the hierarchy information, which will be presented first with last.
Yes, we can do that after, but first.
Yeah.
So we also have run history. We have queue.
We do have version. I mean, I think that version should be, should be separate from just inputs. Yes, it can be redundant. It can be in the input, but I think that it should also exist separately.
Yeah, each of these has a few additional things. So queue has current items, but it also queue history. Well, yes, no. We have this run history, which is the stage runs that were executed, but we also want to have queue history where you can see the ones that were rejected.
Definitely. So yeah, put it down. How we'll represent it visually. To be clear, we'll see.
Run history is pretty straightforward, right? There's nothing there that is multi-layered. Triggers.
I don't think the triggers exist.
Yeah. Triggers are displayed here, right? That's all you need.
There are only events that are coming in. So maybe event sources, and then you can source for instance from multiple previous from multiple stages, or from multiple, and then listeners or triggers. We have to define that.
So, question here, we are saying that, hey, there is this. So, hypothetical, we have two stages. One is both are listening on this repository, right? But one is listening on this new release trigger, while the other is listening on new commits on master branch. Doesn't really matter.
Clear. You would have a new gray thing.
Okay. So for each, right?
I think it's better. Easier to follow, easier to configure. It gives more flexibility.
So this is really stage dependent, right?
I mean, multiple things can consume messages from that. So you could have 3 more stages that would listen for the messages from the same thing. I mean, it's possible. If it will be a common use case, no clue. But it's definitely possible by the nature of the system, because each stage defines what it wants to listen to, and it can listen on anything. It can listen on any stage, any input, any message. So
right. I mean, I would say that
theoretically, is it possible to bundle that this trigger would be new release, comma, new pushes, and then on the stage level you have a condition to say what do you want to listen to? I mean,
yes.
it's possible.
Yeah. Yes. What do you think about that?
I mean, it's fine.
Because you need to create integration and a webhook on the repo.
I mean, if you would click edit, if you would select this listener and edit it, let's say in sidebar, okay, I'm listening on new releases, but I want to click a checkbox. I also want to listen on new pushes, commits. I mean, we would have to call GitHub and say to GitHub, hey, for that webhook, we also want to listen to this other thing.
Oh, but I would do this a bit differently. I would say we'll on GitHub, because that's what we have on projects right now, right? You turn on everything that we might need.
That's also.
And on the project level, you're defining what you're filtering and what you're consuming, right? So when you're creating integration for Canvas, you would turn on everything that you need for that repository, which is all possible events.
It's just about that we would be getting like relatively high traffic.
Yeah.
On some very active projects, you could have like literally dozens of pushes every few minutes that you don't care about, and then we have to store them. But that's in the realm of like technical. Your customer experience will be the same.
That's the engineering detail, right? I mean, this thing, just to say, there is this GitHub integration that exists outside of this view. And this item just filters what we listen to or consume. So we said that whether that integration is setting up a webhook that receives everything, right, or is selective, doesn't really matter. Here we define what we consume for the canvas. Two separate things. This is like that.
What do you think? Can you maybe rephrase exists outside of this view? I mean, view is just a representation of something that exists in the background, yes, but
what I'm trying to say is, if we take the project as an example, there is that repo connection on the project level, right? But then you have those workflow triggers. This would be workflow triggers. This would be connection to the repository. I'm thinking about it from the perspective of I have a canvas and I'm connecting canvas to a repository, and from that point on, that canvas can consume repository events. But for the stage, I am defining what am I listening to, if that makes sense.
In my head, it's the same thing. I mean, if next to that my canvas, you have like a plus button or add something, I think that then there is a drop down and you can either create a gray or a green thing. So either you create a listener or you create a stage. And if you are creating a listener, at that point in time, you are choosing from the list of integrations. I want to connect to GitHub repo. I want to connect to whatever. And then it appears here. So
right, if you're doing it that way, then if I have a different one here, it would be like this, right? It
yes.
won't be a separate one for
Yeah.
this stage. However, this one triggers on new releases. This one triggers on
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, and that's defined in the conditions of a stage.
Right, but this one emits events on both of these.
Yes.
Right? It's just these consume different
Yes. Yes.
events.
That's
So
right.
that means that on the stage level, in order to avoid confusion, saying, oh, this one, let's say this is number 3, whatever. Hey, the original one triggers on both releases and commits, which is not true. We will need to clarify somewhere. Because if I have it like this, it looks like both of them are triggered on these events.
That's correct. I mean, the conditions would probably end up being somewhat complex.
Mm-hmm.
And written in some DSL. We will see if we'll be able to sufficiently in condensed view represent them in a stage. I mean, that's why there is a possibility. If you want to make things super clear, then you can create 2 gray listeners. One listens only on your releases, the other listens only on commits.
Mm-hmm.
It's cheap, no reason not to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It will be a new integration to the repo.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be also more clear in the view. So, but I'm not against supporting both approaches, but it just makes it easier to understand.
So like this.
Yes.
I mean, the order would be different, but so this is the approaches we'll try out. Maybe let's start with this and see if.
Yeah, it's not a big deal either. We can support both. You can listen to multiple things. That's also fine.
Okay. Good. Event sources. Good. What else does a stage have? So stage definition and stage version. So stage definition is current stage definition, YAML or whatever, and version history. So those are 2 things. Outputs, are there any levels to outputs?
I mean, outputs are least developed thing.
Yeah. Run history, I also don't, it's just
Run history is maybe I mean, it's clear what it is. I just don't know how many data points are there. Visual representation of that might end up being, like there must be a place somewhere where you must see all the details of the run history.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely everything. And then maybe that's going to be the element that it will be expanded here. We'll just take a significant portion of this, drawer, this sidebar. but it's also important that you can link to it directly. So there must be that, copy link if you want to send it to someone. So maybe it's an entity that should also have, there is a condensed view here, but maybe it should also have its own page.
Well, yeah.
Completely separate page that you might eventually want to have comments or.
As we're defining these, it seems that if we would put it all on a single sidebar, we would need to have levels there, right? It cannot be, we cannot have all the information in the sidebar. One example, easier example maybe, because run history also has this workflow and job view, but queue is a simpler, right? For queue, I have current items, the ones that are relevant, as in things that are in queue, the things that say plus 2 more items here. So I would need to have three items in the queue.
Yeah.
That 3 items potentially could be like 50.
Yes, it is possible.
So I need some sort of pagination there, or I would need to scroll a lot. But there is those.
You would eventually want to have like a search functionality. Maybe someone from whatever bizarre reason would have 200 items.
Yeah.
I want to search through them. I want to search through history.
Right.
Debugging some hell. I want to see what triggered what under which condition.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So there is that queue history also. I mean, these current items is a lot smaller set, but as you continue, sure, you have the ones that were executed in run history, but you also have the ones that were maybe rejected, or and you want to see all that. And yeah, I'm only wondering if maybe the run history and the queue list are potentially the same thing.
I don't think they are.
Run history is just queue items that were
in
approved and executed.
In most situations, you will be just consuming the run history. I think that it's in that category of like 95% of the cases. You will just look at the run history. Okay, are these last 3 things that happened clear? I
agree.
The queue, I think queue must exist for debugging purposes and having like full transparency and clarity. But it is probably like third order of importance item that can be somewhere at the bottom, and then you can potentially you have maybe a separate page for the queue, see whole queue, and then the whole completely dedicated page opens where you can filter, list, sort, whatever you want to do for debugging purposes. Very, very infrequently used.
I absolutely agree. I was viewing it more from the perspective of, hey, it's same as test results, for example, right? You want to focus on the failed tests because those are the relevant ones. You have 1,000 tests.
It has that element, yes.
Only 3 of them have failed. When you open the test reports, you want to see the failed ones. You don't care necessarily about past. Sure, maybe you want to check them sometimes for whatever reason. But, and the way that we solve it is we just filter them out. And I was just wondering if instead of having these separate entities that kind of show you the same information just in different states, we have one entity, but we just filter it differently, right?
Yeah, I understand. I don't see like, it's not clear to me what the definite solution is. Mainly, I mean, those like rejected or skipped or whatever.
Yeah, skipped is a good one because it's like our workflows, right?
It will not have like, I mean, you can merge them definitely by just time, and then you have kind of multiplexed skipped ones and actual run history things. I mean, it's possible. But I would also keep them separate.
Okay.
I mean, we want to, I think, show absolutely all the data points possible, for people in the system so they can get themselves out of a trouble. One thing that we have never built inside of like a current Semaphore, if you go to a project level, you don't have a tab to see all the hooks that arrived from GitHub, with kind of a raw payload.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We never build it. If we would have built that, we would have probably like 1,000 support cases less, because people would go over a period of like many years.
Yeah.
Because people would see, okay, hook has not arrived from GitHub. What can I do? I can go to GitHub's list the failed deliveries of hooks or whatever. For that reason mainly.
I understand. And I mean, here they're even more important because they have a lot more details attached to them. They're just not just like those hooks where just
and part of it for Q having here, like not even be able to dive deeper into Q, but maybe just have like a Q as a link for this stage. Initially, you click on that link, completely new tab, new page opens, which is dedicated to that, and do whatever you want there for debugging purposes. We don't have to make the sidebar super heavy.
Good. So we have three things that we can do with these elements. One is when you click on this, there is this, let's call it main sidebar view, and that is what's in the sidebar once you first open it. Then there is a secondary sidebar view, which is you click on something and it updates the content of the sidebar to display information that's relevant for that. For example, I know current items in queue. If you have 3, we display 3. If you have more, you click, and then sidebar gets updated to show you just current items in queue. And there is a third level, which is a dedicated page. So let's maybe list what would be where.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I mean, all pending items in the queue, you should be able to easily inspect them here in the sidebar. And since it's flowing into the run history, then probably all order of information is that queue is somewhere to the top, and then there is almost like an arrow, and it's flowing into the run history. And run history should probably represent also the current running thing plus everything that was run previously, or a couple of items that were run previously. I mean, yeah. I think that we could have that, you can see up to, first whatever couple items in the queue. If there is some edge case where someone is really working with hundreds of items for whatever reason, go to a separate page and then, deal with them, whatever you need to do with them.
Up to, I don't know, 10, 15, whatever.
Yeah.
If more than that, open a dedicated page. So dedicated page is like queue for stage AlexDO QA.
Yeah, and that should be that page should allow you for some compliance reason, God knows what, you should be able to jump to 2 years ago and see why something was in the queue.
Yeah, this will be clear to me. So it's the same page, basically. It's just a single page called queue page for that stage.
Yeah.
And yeah, we can think about but that's more about discussion with developers, whether it's a queue page with that stage turned on as a filter, or if we have a queue page for every single stage as a separate entity. But anyways, one thing is sure that on that page you see queue items, and if you want to, you have the queue history, but that's just a filtering on that page. It's not like we have two pages. If
No,
I have,
on that single page, you can filter on like
yes, okay.
Yeah, messages that were processed or were rejected, or
Okay, so queue is clear. We can specify where it is and what info is there for a single item, but yeah, we're slowly defining it. Event sources should be very straightforward, right? That's on. That's definition of. Do we even, yeah, are we even showing them here? I mean, why not?
I mean, this is the place where you would be defining them. That's maybe the because you create a new stage.
Mm-hmm.
It's a blank stage.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the first things is that you want to click on that stage and define what it's listening to, and then it's like some kind of like list of sources.
Mm-hmm.
You can remove one, add one, modify.
Got it.
It's that drop down with filter where if you have 15 stages, add a new one. I want this one to listen to whatever other stage. I want to pick that from list and start consuming messages from that list. And what might be then embedded in that creation process is creation of that condition. Okay, I'm going to listen to these two messages from this stage, but I only want finished final versions without RC. And not over the weekend. But the conditions are the most complex thing, I think, in this whole system. So we'll have to wait for engineers to maybe also advance a little bit more here.
Yeah. Do you think that those that say trigger only on weekends, is that defined on the event source, or is it defined in the queue? As in,
it's in the conditions for sure. The question is to what we are tying the question is, are we going to tie conditions to queue or to event sources? If you want to make event sources super simple, then okay, I'm listening to these. It's just a list. Fine, done.
Yeah, but that's a functionality decision, not so much engineering one. Because it's very different.
The thing about queue, so queue is there is a one queue. All the messages from different sources are entering that queue.
Yes.
And for each of the messages that are coming in, you need to have separate conditions, or it can be one big one. That's the question.
Yeah, let's say I have use case that this should only happen on weekends. So the question is, does that mean that I need only versions that were released on weekends? Or do I approve deployments only during weekends, right? That's the difference between setting this on the event level and setting it on the queue level.
There are 2 things. One is what I want to be entering my queue.
Yes.
There are things that I don't want even to enter my queue.
Yes.
And then it seems that there is a separate thing, which is what queue will just hold and not act on it, will not let it into the stage.
Yes.
And those will be probably two separate conditions.
Yes.
And I mean, it's fine if they are both tied to the queue, but you might need to have.
I would have just two different conditions on two different elements. One is for the queue, as you described it in the way that you described it is probably the best way to set it up, and easiest to understand for the user too.
One is what is entering the queue, and the other one is what is exiting the queue.
Yes, yeah. One is which events you are consuming, and you're setting filters there, because if you're listening for new commits, right?
It's fine. It's fine. It's just that there might be multiple filters when things are entering. That's the only thing, that because you can listen to two event sources. You can listen to Git messages, but you can also listen to some other stage.
Yep.
And then you have two sources. And we are then combining them in a single queue.
Yep.
Not to go crazy. And then you have like two pipes entering a single queue. You might need to have two conditions for different messages that are entering the queue, but theoretically you could have only one condition about what is going to exit the queue and to be propagated further. It's something that almost needs to be, I think, visually represented also for communication with developers.
Yes. Okay. That makes sense. Now that you mentioned two potential sources, we don't want to duplicate stuff, and if you were setting this up on the event sources level, these filters, you may be duplicating things. Okay, so we have these queue settings where you can define policies and or what enters the queue and what gets triggered inside the queue and how.
Yeah.
And event sources are just the events that the stage is listening to. Here you can define them and also add new ones or edit the existing ones, and that's it.
Yeah.
All of this happens in the sidebar.
I think that the UI for event sources will be simple enough to do that.
Yeah, I agree. It's just two levels, right? If it's two levels, then I'm okay with it happening in the sidebar.
Yeah.
If you need more levels, then it probably should be in the separate page, right? Because for things happening in the sidebar, it can be minimized view and you can expand it, but it's all in the same sidebar. Or it can be you click on something, it's technically a new sidebar, but you have that back button at the top, or complete, and once you complete it brings you back to this main view. So I think that's the options that we have. Run history.
I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
I mean, event sources and queue. Yeah, you deal with them sometimes.
Queue is pretty important in some cases.
The pending queue is probably the top.
Yeah.
And then after that comes run history.
Yeah, but that's a separate page. It's fine. Oh, sorry. I thought you meant queue history. Run history. Okay. So for run list. I'll just call it runs because there are several things. It's not just history, right?
Yeah. I mean, my head all runs are the same. They are I mean, they obviously can be currently running. They can be finished with either passed or failed. They can be canceled. Someone can click stop, some stop button somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe that would just end up being, failed and stopped in combination. But they are not to go into those details.
Yeah, run history is pretty much our regular workflow list that we have.
Yes.
Right. The only thing here is, what do I want to see on the main sidebar view? I want to see same thing as a queue, right? I see last 3 on main view. I can expand up to 10. Anything else is a separate page.
Yeah, we can work with that. We can definitely start with that. And all the possible adjustments would be, just some UI optimization, because someone wants to access some piece of information faster, and we might, expand what the run history item contains in the sidebar. So it's maybe not 4, but actually 5 data points, and for everything else, separate page, and then.
Yeah, but my point is that we now have some unified UI elements, as in you have this, it has certain amount of items, then you can expand and stay in the main sidebar. It just has scroll. But if you need more than that, you go to a separate page.
Yeah, run history for the stage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Same as with queue.
Yes. Which would have date filter and
you have filters and whatnot. Yes. Okay. Single run is if I want to open this pipeline, I actually get a dedicated page, right?
It's a current workflow page that exists.
No, I don't need this because
exists already.
Okay. Outputs. I don't know.
I mean, there's the inputs, outputs, stage definition. I think for most people, those would be configured like touched once a quarter. In terms of editing, if they can be in a condensed way represented here all the time, that would be nice.
I have one thing here. There is the stage definition inputs and outputs as a definition of the stage itself. If that makes sense, because inputs and outputs in terms of stage definition are all part of stage definition, not just YAML, but we can add them here as items of they belong to stage definition, right? If I change and say that, hey, this stage doesn't consume this input anymore, or doesn't have this input anymore, I should see that here. It's not just the what stage runs, if that makes sense.
I lost you at some point.
So what is the stage version?
You can see it as a blob of YAML.
Okay.
It is defining all everything about that stage,
including inputs and outputs.
Yes.
Okay, good. So inputs and outputs in terms of stage definition are part of this
It is, yes, that's true. It's just that, they can be also represented in some nicer way here, if
Yeah.
we end up thinking that that's useful.
Yeah, here I was thinking more in the lines of this.
That's the current.
Yes.
That's the latest run or the current stage of.
Yes.
So I would not. That should be handled by the run history.
That should be in
But-
run history.
Yes.
So if I want to see which version of Semaphore is deployed on the DigitalOcean environment, that's something that I see here.
Yes.
It's not a first-class citizen.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we don't need this because this is in the stage definition. Or maybe we want to, as you said, point them out.
We might want to pull them out.
Let's say this.
But it's not
Stage
really important at
meta.
this point.
Stage meta. And let's say name. That's everything that's in stage definition, but it's data that we pull from different sources, maybe, that's name, input versions. What else?
I don't know outputs, but it's we would just dump that initially here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we'll have to live with it a little bit before we can easily figure out what's useful to pull in. It's fine as it is now, but I cannot.
Yeah, I added descriptions
Further at
because
this point.
got it. I added description too, something that we didn't take into account, but that's the first ticket that pops up after you launch a feature is like, I need a description for this. We made that mistake.
One thing that people might want to do, and I mean, yeah, it can be part of the stage of the stage name. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Adding some kind of like icon or some visual, that stage can have like icon, which could be emoji or anything else.
Why not?
I mean, for
It's cheap to do.
it's one way to group, not to group, but to help people visually group things that are somehow connected or the same. So I don't know, all the US environments can have a US flag, and all the EU environments can have a EU flag, and because they're all kind of just green and the same. It's a detail.
Oh,
It can be held with a name also theoretically. But
right. You said something now that reminded me about important thing that we didn't really go over because we didn't have that in the use case, but we want to have the option of grouping stages and having stage groups.
yeah, I have some ideas there how that can be done. But it's yeah.
Not part of this conversation, right?
Yeah, probably not part of this conversation.
Okay. Okay, cool. So maybe we can order things in terms of priorities.
That goes to the bottom. There is maybe some small link somewhere up here.
Right. So first things first, obviously,
Name, description, icon. Yeah.
that goes at the top. Then
Queue.
so queue is more important
It's not
than
so important. It's just visually that's the way that things are flowing. You know.
yeah, it's what you would consume first when you open the stage, right?
It's a pending. You know, if you would merge queue and runs into one view,
Mm-hmm.
you would have pending things, currently
Mhm.
running things, and things
Mhm.
that were run.
Oh, good.
So
So
like condensed queue first, and then runs.
would we flip that in this view also?
I mean, in that view, I mean, this one that we are looking at is like finished. I mean, the stage. We could
Mhm.
also have a running stage.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, beyond that time, it's hard for me to understand like what the split would mean.
Because we have this thing that says versions. On this view, I'm showing, hey, this is what's currently on stage. And it's something
Yeah,
that you want
that
to have.
version should not say versions. It should be, you know, current.
Run, last run.
Yeah, the box as a whole should be the last run, plus like info about a queue status.
Yeah, I have, if you don't mind, we can talk a bit about this last run thing. As you said, here we have only the successful one, and that one is clear. But
I
what
think
if I have running one?
but you must duplicate this one, put one below, you know, paint it in blue, and then we talk about what is a running one.
Sure, why not? Okay. So what is the running one? That's my question. Do we have something that's
We must represent that, you know, liveness model, you know, for how long something is running, what is running.
right? But I still want to see what's currently on my environment.
That's also, yeah.
I'm asking this because there was a divided opinion on people on our project homepage, right? So on project homepage, we're displaying one item in the list per branch. If I go to RTX, for example, and I go to some random project, you know, I have branch, pull request, branch, pull request, and it's one item each here. And then if I open main branch, I get this history, right?
Okay.
Which is pretty much same as with stages in our case. Now, the question is, which one is displayed here, right? And right now, we are displaying the last one in the list.
Which will be running one.
Or the queued one.
And we are not displaying the running one. Yeah. This is not ideal.
Yeah, but
you would want to see the last, what is the previous one probably that was marked green, plus what is currently running. And this about queue is like it's an appendix, you know. It sometimes exists, sometimes don't.
Got it.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, I fully agree on that. The only question that I have is it, do you want to see the last green one plus the running one, or you want to see the last green one or the running one?
I mean, displaying both is, I think, the safest option. People will be happy with that. It's just that it should not be overwhelming, but it's a more design game. Oh, yeah.
Right. Okay. I think it's also okay saying that, you know, queue is queue, and the items that are in queue are have their own separate things shown here.
Yeah.
But the stage can be either in the past, failed, or running state, and
Or zero state.
or zero state.
Nothing has ever went through it.
Right. Right.
There is maybe even a draft stage. While something, it exists, but it's not configured fully, so it's not operational. But yeah, those are like really, really edge cases.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good. So run history. Q, and then run history. Is that right?
Yep.
So I have two lists here. One is Q and the one is run history. So if I want to see what's currently deployed on my environment, I don't really need to enter the sidebar. I see that on this minimized view. You're muted, by the way. I see that on the minimized view. It's either already deployed or there is a deployment running. Doesn't really make a difference for me, because if there's a deployment running, I know that that environment is inoperational, right? So I as soon as the deployment starts, what was on that environment before is not important anymore.
Why?
I mean, on this quick view, it is important in a sense of I still want the option of clicking on that and seeing which was there, but it's not important anymore because I cannot access Semaphore C while the deployment is running. If that makes sense.
But the thing is that there is a deployment, but there are like also other operations that can be done, you know, kind of going wild. Like all the things can be modeled with this. And deployment processes are also like very, very different, you know.
Okay.
So maybe something is operational all the time, you know, and maybe deployment runs for 25 minutes, and only at the very last stage it's going to reconnect the DNS. So people would be consuming and seeing the current version during the whole deployment process until a very last, you know, step where something is going to happen in a, you know, millisecond.
Okay. So on this stage, I see only. So if I have successful and then a running one, it's clear. I need to see both in this view, right? It's okay. What about failed ones?
Also, I would say so. It's just about that failed one. It might be like a very condensed, you know, data point. You know, there is current and running. You know, I don't know how visually we should represent that, but that current and running, I think that it would make sense to have both. I hope it's not going to be hard to.
No, I think it's going to be okay.
Those.
There is a running one. It deployed as additional information. and stage state or whatever is based on the active.
Yeah.
So I want to see that too. So I have two things that I'm displaying here. Last one that finished, and also if there's a running one, that's additional information that's displayed
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Okay, and then if I need more info, I can open the sidebar and see the history, but that history is just 3 items instead of 1. Here I see 1, or I can expand to 10, and that's kind of it. And queue is the first class here, and then runs. Okay, and then I guess are these two separate things?
It's highly questionable. I mean, I don't think that we are capable of developing that that further. I think that we can develop that when we enter the stage creation phase, and that would show us what's important maybe initially, and how that changes once a stage is fully configured, and then I mean, your queue will be empty, you will have no runs, so yeah, I don't know, but I would postpone these decisions.
Good. I guess we can in the next session continue working on the queue and runs.
Yeah, we can take care of queue and runs, and after that go to creation of a new stage.
Yep. Yeah, but it's clear on what information we will have in sidebar.
Yeah.
We just need to start.
Yeah.
Updating this, and that's it. Okay. Should we?
Yeah. Let's wrap it up.
Good.
Okay.
See you tomorrow.
Bye bye.